And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soul Survivor podcast, episode 3 of Survivor 46. And once again, I have Brett with me. How you doing, Brett?
I'm doing well. I think you just can't get rid of me right now. Back for another helping of Survivor and another week where we're doing it pretty late, so I kind of had to refresh myself again on the episode. But happy to be back with you one more time this season, Ryan.
Brett, I always appreciate you chatting with me about Survivor. Hopefully, I was saying to Brett before the podcast, next week, we're hoping that it's not so late in terms of being close to the next episode. It's just because I've been away almost every weekend in March, and Dylan's been busy with work, especially now with March Madness coming up. So hopefully next week we'll be back with you, a bit earlier, maybe like that Friday, Saturday, Sunday window, and then we'll see what happens for the rest of the season. But yeah, we're just happy to be back and chatting Survivor.
I was gonna say I got my TV on over there on True TV. The first game is going on right as we speak. So a little CBS Network shout out right there. True TV, it's on right now.
Who is it? Virginia and who?
No, it's the Wagner game. So actually, local team for us, Staten Island.
Oh.
Wagner, they're the 16 seed playing. So Virginia's later, I think.
Okay, yeah, that's right. That's later. Got it. Okay. Well, you know what? If anything exciting happens in real time, I guess you'll see from Brett and I. So
Exactly.
Okay, but yeah, episode 3 of Survivor 46. Brett, I gotta say, before we get into everything with the headline of the episode and the recap, I will be honest, it's taken time to kind of bat me down. I'm feeling the fatigue. We've had a little bit of a start slow to the season. I know we said last week that Survivor 45 started slow, but it got way better towards the end with Dee's win. But yeah, here's the problem with one tribe losing every 2 weeks. It gets a bit repetitive, honestly.
Yeah, we're seeing the same tribe a lot. And the fact is, this episode, I like the 90-minute episodes. I know you do too. But we had a 2-hour episode where we had one tribal, and then we have an hour and a half episode without a tribal, and you feel like you don't get the payoff when you don't get a tribal in an episode. So it was a flat end to the episode, obviously. And I don't know about you. I don't want to bash the guy too hard, but I feel like I know I am. Maybe a lot of other viewers are getting Banu fatigue at this point. Honestly, I mean, I don't know what you could probably say sort of when the last time we had maybe this prominent of a figure kind of dominate a pre-merge edit so intensely as Banu, especially a character that, let's be honest, is probably not likely to win the game. So it feels like we're giving a huge edit to someone who is not really a real player, and really was told straight to his face by Q. So I don't know. Do you think that viewers are already getting Banu fatigue? I mean, it's a lot.
I think it's very polarizing. I've seen both sides on Twitter. I've seen people say, like, he's very annoying. It takes up the whole episode. He loves the show as a fan, but he doesn't know how to play it. I've seen a lot of people, like, you and a little bit of myself, kind of out on him. But then I've seen a bunch of people saying, yeah, but like, he's not a game bot. He's very emotional. Like, he's annoying, but he's very authentic. He's not like acting up for the camera. So I've seen people both ways. People, I don't think there's a middle ground. People either love seeing him or people are very tired of him already.
Yeah, and as you said, I mean, I'm definitely tired of him already. Although I will say I agree with you that, and I would agree with the people who maybe do like him, that I feel like he's totally authentic. You're getting a true character who is having meltdowns and is, horrible at the game and is kind of surviving by the skin of his teeth. But we're getting a true, authentic person. It just, is this really what I want to see on my Survivor program? I'm not sure. That's the only other thing. But I think you are seeing a real person, and maybe too real at times. But and the fact is that tribe keeps losing, so we see him and them all the time. I mean, we'll talk about it, but we saw almost nothing from Siga this episode, and they've already been so under edited, and we'll talk about it, but we had to go back in time to get any content from them. So the editing this season has been very strange. We have these longer episodes, but the editing is still crazy.
I mean, and yeah, like you said, like that's when basically you have to flash back for a tribe, nothing is happening for them. And Yanu just keeps losing. There's some interesting things on Nami, but it's just basically been the Yanu show and the Yanu and the Banu show.
Yeah.
I think to answer your question that you posed to me a few minutes ago, is this, when's the last time we've seen someone dominate a pre-merge edit like this? I mean, I think an easy answer is I can go back to like season 19 and like Russell like dominated. It's like Russell was in maybe half of every episode of Samoa, basically. I mean, since then, Like, obviously, Carolyn was a character, but she wasn't like, dominating the edit like that.
It would
I
have to
could,
be a tribe that loses a lot, obviously. But I think even a
yeah,
lot of the disaster tribes that we've seen, I'm not sure it's had one focus like this. I mean, you think of like Jatia, but that tribe was
maybe,
still getting a
yeah.
pretty even edit though. This, I mean, not saying that they're not editing in like Kenzie and Q and stuff, but like
Mhm.
everything driving everything about the tribe is Banu, right? So
Yeah, I mean, he's almost. I don't want to say he's the narrator because the narrator is somebody who's kind of well positioned in the game. But like, I felt like depending on what was going to happen with Orange, if they were losing, oh, Tevin's going to be our main narrator, our main character. But because Purple just keeps losing, it really has been, like you mentioned, all about Banu, and everything is circling back to him. Whether it's the vote, the journey, the challenge, everything is circling back to him. So.
yeah, so I mean, I guess do you have? I know you do your weekly sort of big picture question, usually relating to tribal. So what is it this week? I mean, my question to you would be
Sure. Yeah.
if they did go to tribal, and I don't know if you were going to bring this up.
Mhm.
What do you think was going to happen? I mean, because they teased that Tiffany is considering getting out Kenzie with Q. Do you think if there was a crazy twist in store there, or was it going to be straightforward and be Banu if they went?
So yeah, I think that's actually the great question because we don't have a vote to really discuss. If Yanu had to go to tribal council, Banu lost his vote, so it would just be the three-person alliance voting. Um, it really comes down to Tiffany because even though Q wants to make this move, Q has gone on the record saying, I don't want to blindside my number one ally in Tiffany. Either I'm going to cave in and just go with what she wants, or I'm going to ensure that she votes with me. And, like you mentioned before Jeff gets there, you see Tiffany waffling and being like, do I vote out Kenzie and lose an ally and kind of be at the mercy of Banu and Q, or do I cut Banu just because like he's so unreliable in the game? And in Q even says in the confessional before we cut out of the episode, Q's like Kenzie was gone. So in Q's mind, he thought he had Kenzie dead to rights. Whether or not that was actually going to happen and Tiffany was with him, I don't know. But yeah, if I had to predict right now, I don't think Tiffany's getting rid of Kenzie just yet. So I think Banu still would have gone. Do you think the same, or do you think Kenzie actually was going to go out there?
I think Banu would have went. I think that Tiffany already is kind of like you could tell that Tiffany's done with Banu already, and that she's over it. I feel like just honestly for her, it might have just been like just to restore her sanity that she was going to get rid of Banu. Honestly, I just feel like she was so dead set on it. It's I think it's the editors sort of playing some tricks on you a little bit. Like I really don't
Mhm.
think that she really would have considered it, to be honest with you. I think it
Yeah,
would have
I
been a
mean,
3-0 at the end of the day.
yeah, I think the only if I'm Tiffany, the only reason that I'm getting rid of Kenzie here, even though I would not want to lose an ally, is like you really are scared of a swap or a merge that she's too dangerous to let go. But I just think Banu is so detrimental to your game in terms of spilling all your secrets. I just don't think you can leave that wild card on the board. And if I'm Tiffany, if Q is kind of cozying up to Banu, I would be scared if we lost a fourth time. Now I'm at like a 2-1 minority against them. So I feel like we're both saying the same thing where we don't think it was going to happen. If it was, I would think it's a bad move on Tiff's part, but luckily she doesn't have to make that choice yet.
She doesn't have to make that choice yet, although we see from the preview of the next episode that it seems like Banu tells them all that he basically said everything. So and they turn on him again. So
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll see. At this point though, Banu does seem like that sort of insect that you just cannot kill. That that is not going to die. And I could see him. If they go on a little winning streak and he gets on the right tribe, the tribe swap. I mean, he can make it to merge. Why not?
So let me ask you one more quick question about Banu, Brett, before we get into the episode and the medevac. Would you say Banu is the most like, if we're going to put like the odds like minus 200, do you feel like Banu is the most likely person to get to final three and be the GOAT? Now, you could argue like a few seasons ago where Matthew in 44 got medevaced and Josh got saved. And we're like, oh, could Josh have new life? And then Josh got cut the very next episode at Merge. Could Banu be cut next episode or in two? Sure, Banu could be out soon. But because he's such a wild card for that tribe and people maybe feel sorry for him in the game, do you feel like Banu is our most likely candidate for Final 3 GOAT right now?
I mean, the way I look at it is that I think he's the least likely to make the final 3 of everyone right now. If you had to, if I was just looking at it that way, the way I look at it is that, I mean, I don't know who else would be classified as a GOAT, maybe like Liz based on her edit or something like that. So he definitely has like some qualities where you'd be like, maybe he could be a final 3 GOAT. And yeah, if he gets to the merge, like who's going to want to go after him, right? Because he's such a weak player or perceived that way. So yeah, I mean, I guess I could see it, but at the same time, like, I just still think next time he is at Tribal, he's going to go. And like, people are never going to think they could work with him because they're going to be told, like, this guy just, gives away information on everyone. Like, there's no way you can trust this guy. So I don't think he's going to make the final 3, which is why I would say no to your question.
Yeah. I guess we'll see. I mean, I guess we'll see if Purple loses yet again. I mean, if I had to bet money, I just don't think they're ever going to win, honestly.
But we'll talk. I mean, I guess we'll eventually get to the Tribal, the immunity challenge from this episode. But they weren't looking too bad, but they collapsed there at the end. We'll talk about it with Q kind of hating himself after that. But yeah,
I knew it was going to happen, basically. But yeah, so. Yeah, yeah. Let's I guess start with the headline before we get through the episode. Probably will be a quicker one tonight since there was a medevac and no Tribal. Randon Brett gets medevaced here. I could argue maybe the freakiest or the most unlucky medevac in the history of the show. I mean, yeah, like 2 seasons ago, Bruce obviously hit his head and like got out quickly, which is obviously kind of bad luck on his part. But like, I can't think of all the medevacs in history between like Bruce's gastrointestinal distress or Courtney breaking her wrist or Russell Swan passing out. Like, out of all the medevacs, I can't think of a more freaky or unlucky one than you going to bed and waking up with like no feeling in your arm, complete nerve damage, and you can't even like close your fist. I mean, is this the worst? Like, just like horrible luck wise?
I don't know. It's tough to say. I mean, of course, my mind immediately goes to Scooping in the Fire, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of like unlucky. I mean, this is like the weirdest one where it's just like, I don't know, because if I was him, and you could see that he really was like, he understood why he had to go, because that's such a freaky thing to think that's happened, right? Where you just sort of like, you lose feeling in your arm. So, I mean, I would be the same way, where it's like, it's not like, oh, you have like a really bad cut, or you have a really, or you break something and you think maybe you could like fight through it and it's repairable. It's like, this is something internally that's messed up. So, I mean, I guess it is one of the more unfortunate ones, but at the same time, I also feel like, I don't know. I know that Bruce came back recently, but do you think Randon's going to be asked back at some point? I don't know. Did he make a big enough impression as a character to ever come back?
If they do like a new era, like Second Chance, like Cambodia, where people vote, I could maybe see him getting a vote to come back. I don't think he's going to get the Bruce treatment where it's like, oh, we feel bad for you, we're going to bring you back, because Bruce literally didn't even get to play 12 hours. Randon at least got 7 days worth of his experience. So maybe Second Chance, but I don't think they're just going to naturally bring him back. I wouldn't think.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, it's too bad, and we'll get into it, but I mean, there seemed to be something going with him and Venus so that they could really help each other out, and was something promising that we were talking about last episode. So for it to just sort of end this way was unfortunate for Randon, but it was, as we'll get to, unfortunate for Venus as well. And she, verbalized that.
So yeah, like you mentioned with Venus, it's tough because you and myself and everybody was probably wondering, did he try to give her the beware advantage before he left? And could he have even? And Jeff gave the answer to this on his podcast. And unfortunately, with Jeff kind of losing the plot recently, it's very ticky-tack, because I went back in history and I looked at this and I was like, every time a person has left with an advantage in their pockets, they never give it up. Like when Colton medevac quit, whatever, when Colton left One World, he had the idol in his pocket or whatever, and then he didn't give it to like Alicia or whatever. When in Kaoh Rong, remember Neil got medevaced and he didn't give the idol or whatever to Aubrey. And then I think 2 seasons ago, when Matthew, the guy that was climbing the rocks, got medevaced, he didn't give his idol to Jamie or whatever. So the point is that every time somebody leaves with an advantage, they never give it to an ally. And at first I was like, well, does everybody just want a souvenir? Like, who cares? But what Jeff said was like, apparently he takes the letter of the law very seriously. which is like once Jeff's kind of like once your torch is snuffed, like you're done. Jeff has said
Yeah.
like once Jeff says we have to medically pull you out, they're out of the game. So at that point, Randon couldn't give it to Venus. Like basically, Jeff was saying if like Randon, and this is why this is stupid. Like, how did Randon know in that exact moment that Jeff, like, Randon would have had to see Jeff walking down the beach and then run to give Venus the thing. Otherwise, he has no way of knowing, because up until Jeff says we have to pull you from the game, that's it. So Randon only had that time to give that beware advantage to Venus.
Yeah, as you said, I mean, these rules that are made up are obviously so arbitrary, and it's like that's the thing. Like we're talking about the letter of the law, but like we're talking about a reality TV show where seemingly production make up new rules every season. You know, even this season, this new advantage or with the idol where they have to find it before tribal or whatever is new. I mean, they're always isn't that's the whole point. You keep saying, "Oh, the game is updating," and so something like that just seems so like arbitrary and random that like why can't it just be put by production or something into their bag when they, after the person leaves? Like, why can't they leave it to someone? It's just like, I don't know. It's a little bit, it's, as you said, it's ticky tacky, and for what purpose? I don't know.
The one rule that I wish they would implement, and unfortunately it didn't apply here, was I think you and I talked about this, but Australian Survivor has a rule where if somebody gets injured or they have a medical issue, if they can make it back within 24 hours and not miss tribal council, they can come back into the game. So famously, George, an Australian Survivor, obviously amazing player if no one's seen that season, gets hurt in the first challenge or the first immunity challenge. He goes to the hospital, he gets evaluated, and then he comes back within 24 hours, and he was allowed to continue. Now, people were saying, well, why didn't if Brandon just needs an MRI, why can't he get an MRI? If he's clear, why can't he come back? And unfortunately, he revealed he didn't get feeling back in his arm for like a few weeks to a month, and he had to take like anti-inflammatories and stuff. So he was never going to come back. But like, I wish US Survivor had that same rule where it's like, if they can come back in 24 hours, like you should let them come back.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that would kind of put people at ease as well in terms of like leaving the game. I mean, I think he accepted it, but a lot of people, they hate to hear that they're going to be pulled from the game. But if you get told, well, maybe look at an MRI or whatever, an X-ray or whatever it may be for something, maybe you can come back in if everything is fine. I know that'd be a little fairer to people, but again, at the same time, like with this, something so scary as losing your whole feeling in your arm. Like if I was Randon, I mean, you wouldn't want to go back in no matter what, I think at that point. So I think he understood it. So it was what it was, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think Randon, like a lot of people, I think if he basically had a chance to stay, I think he would have stayed. I don't think he was ever going to quit. But when Jeff was like, no, it could be a bulging disc and you could like have like long-term nerve damage, like, I mean, they don't have a choice. And what the problem is too, because then somebody pointed out, do you think they even would have let Randon come back? And someone was like, well, God forbid CBS brings him back and then he gets hurt again. Like now, are you liable? Like it could be really like slippery slope. So I wish they could bring him back or bring like people back within 24 hours. But I could see CBS being like, we're not even going to risk like legal issues on this.
Yeah, and you can't blame them for that. And I think ultimately with this one, as you said, I think some people were questioning it at first because it seemed like he was actually not that injured or anything, but he was never going to come back in the game, obviously, if he was still, without feeling for the next couple of weeks and was in pain and everything, whatever in his arm. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone handled it badly for this case. I just wish, as we said, there were rules regarding leaving stuff for, someone else. And I think Randon probably would have done it because it seemed like he actually built up a connection with Venus. So,
yeah. And unfortunately, unfortunately, like Randon says in post-game interviews, like there was a chance that they could have made a move against like Soda or something, but obviously not now. We'll never know. So
we'll see.
But let's get through the rest of the episode. I mean, we start basically at Yanu like we always do, and Banu felt left out, Brett, because he didn't know about the fake idol plan for Jess, and I almost feel bad for Banu because he is the old story of like Suri, where it's like you get up off the couch and you play the game, but Suri's actually good at the game, whereas Banu got up off the couch and he can't play the game. Because I actually feel a little bit bad, putting like the emotional stuff aside, Tiffany, Q, and Kenzie are just running circles around this man, just being like, oh, well, we had to do that because Jess was going to vote you out. And he's like, what? But Jess was my friend. She voted for me. He goes, she voted for me. And I'm like, Banu, there was only one vote for not her. Like, who else could have voted? You can't vote for yourself. So I feel bad for this man. They're running circles around him.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was saying the same thing about Jess last week. But I think with Banu, I do sort of feel bad because I think there is an element of the cultural kind of disconnect there as well. And I just think that, as you said, he's straight off the couch. And I mean, later in the episode, we'll talk about it, but he goes, "Oh, Jeff is my guru," and so this clearly means a lot to him. But some people are not made for the game, and as you said, he can't process even like who voted for who, and it's such an obvious vote. And you could see like him trying to go to Kenzie and work out, what to do, and he's overwhelmed by the prospect of playing the game. So that's why I'm saying I don't think he can go much further, because I just think he can't even process a normal vote. And now we know in the new era, votes are always crazy and always live tribals and all that. He can't handle that.
Yeah, I mean, he just is in a spot where he wants to be, like you just mentioned, he wants to be included, but he just doesn't have the game sense to make it happen. Like like you said, he goes to Kenzie and he's trying to find a way in, and he just, I forget like what he's, maybe you remember, I can't remember like what he said, but like she tried to get names out of him and like he couldn't even like give up a name. Like obviously if he thinks like Q is going to work with him, I guess he could have maybe thrown out Tiffany's name, but like obviously Banu knows the three of them are aligned, so it doesn't like really no good. So he's already in a bad spot, but he can't even like figure out a way to get into this group.
Yeah. I said I just looked, rewatched a little before the show just to make sure I remembered everything. And Banu wouldn't toss out a name, which Kenzie didn't like, but I don't really blame him for that. I mean, it's a tough situation, as you said. Like, it's a tough situation for anyone to play in this sort of, at the bottom of four people, and like there's no way in. But he wasn't willing to throw a name out there, and I'm not even sure it was for game reasons. I just think that he's not the type to sort of be sneaky and doesn't want to be perceived that way. And so, it's a tough situation for him regardless, but he still didn't handle that scene too well, I guess, with Kenzie.
I will give Banu like one piece of credit though, that like Kenzie's obviously very, social. She's obviously like a pretty decent social player, even though people are kind of clocking her. Banu's kind of not swayed by her. I feel like Kenzie, from what I've seen so far, if I see her get to merge or swap, I feel like she has the chops to kind of get in good with a lot of people and be a pretty good social player. But Banu, clearly it's not really rubbing off on him. And he kind of picks up on the fact, like the whole mermaid dragon thing, where he's like, I sense how dangerous Kenzie is. And that was actually a little bit surprising to me, because I feel like every time Banu gets brought in by somebody, he doesn't want to turn on them. Like, I feel like Banu to me is somebody who doesn't vote based on strategy. He votes based on emotions, or he votes based on like relationship currency. Like, I don't see him at this point turning against Q, because Q is trying to bring him in. And I think if he makes it to a swap or a merge, the way that Ben and Liz were very nice to him at the journey, I don't think he's going to go against Ben and Liz. So to me, I wouldn't like, if I was trying to outthink Banu's moves in the game, I wouldn't think, what is he going to do that strategically makes sense? I would think, who does he have like relationship currency with? And then he's just going to vote based on that. But Kenzie's like not budging him at all.
Yeah, it's interesting how he really has like attached to this idea that Kenzie is like the mastermind, and he's actually said that on the journey. And it kind of feels like random though. Like it's tough to really say who is totally in control of the Yanu tribe. Like, it does sort of seem like it shifts. Like, to me as the viewer, Q seems the one that like he seems to want to dictate the vote. Tiffany seems like maybe the most actually in control in many ways, but then he's sort of fixating on Kenzie as being like the mastermind, even though people are picking up on her being maybe too socially strong and wanting to get rid of her. So I feel like it's a weird one where like he has attached this idea that she's a mastermind, but I think we as the viewer haven't really seen that in the edit. So it's a little strange, but it does seem like Banu, at least he is willing to trust certain people, but he seems like he's done with Kenzie.
Yeah. And like you mentioned with Q, even though I think Tiffany has maybe the most options in the tribe because she's close with both Q and with Kenzie, Q, despite Banu saying Kenzie's the mastermind, Q is the one that's like, no, I see Banu as an option. I want to kind of bring him in, and I would not mind making a move against Kenzie. But Q, maybe Banu just like wants to be accepted and he's fine with whatever, Brett. But I'll be honest, knowing how you and I are, I feel like if somebody called me a Philip to my face or a liability to my face, I probably would not take it super well.
Yes, and of course, I just love the fact that we are getting from Q here a Redemption Island reference in 2024 in this sort of way. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if Banu actually understood what that meant, but of course, we know that it is definitely not a good thing to be called Philip to a Boston Rob. And the funny thing is that I think Banu actually has, honestly, as a viewer and him as a character, he actually has a lot of Philip tendencies, in my opinion, that he is this sort of over the top character that, at least to me, rubs me the wrong way and is I'm seeing too much of in the edit. But so in that way, I was actually laughing when Q said it, because I'm like, wow, this guy actually, he is like Philip. So I mean, I think it's actually an apropos comparison.
I mean, Brett, you want another reference, not only Redemption Island. I'm going to go the Tim route. I'm going to give you a Caramoan reference. Famously, and I still can't believe in 2024 we got a Caramoan reference from Tim. But this is Brett, almost like freaking Sherry and Shamar, where obviously Shamar does, go out pre-merge with his eye injury, but Sherry was, I don't think she said this to Shamar's face, but in confessional, she's like, Shamar is my Philip. And Sherry had the same exact thought. Like, there's a guy who is not going to win. I'm going to bring him to the end as a GOAT. It didn't end up working out, but like,
I didn't know that was true. So that was already said on Survivor, was a reference to someone being their Philip as a GOAT that you could bring all the way. I forgot about that. So that's unbelievable.
I forgot about that too. I was like, oh my God, Sherry literally in confessional, at least, not to his face, but Sherry was like, Shamar is my Philip.
But that was the thing that was amazing with this, was it was so brazenly right to his face. And later on, I guess maybe we'll talk about it, but he calls him a liability right to his face. Like, I will take you as a liability and mold you into something better. Like, again, this is where I think the cultural thing is playing a factor, because I think, honestly, I like maybe an English-born, American-born person whose English is their first language would be like, you're calling me a liability to my face, like, F you,
Yeah. I mean, we'll see it later in the episode, but like you said, with the liability, I mean, Banu kind of gave him every reason to call him that, because he just was giving up every secret in the book. Brett.
Yeah, so should we move along to the incredibly dynamic and fascinating tribe that is Siga?
I was gonna say, I'm looking at the podcast clock right now in the top corner. I'm wondering if we're done with this in a minute or two. Siga, I mean, God bless them. I mean, obviously they're great in challenges. They're dominating. They're probably going to be that tribe that doesn't lose people up until the merge. But like we said at the start, they get a maybe 2-minute segment that's not even present day. It's literally 4 days ago on day 1. And all that we see is the tribe goes on an idol hunt, and Jem for the last 4 days has had the Beware advantage. And that's all we've seen.
What I love is that last week we talked about, and I complained about the Taylor Swift segment. And then this week we get, because basically why they hit this is the fact that it's the same, because of course with idol hunts, they're so similar, right? And it's kind of, you get bored watching, they watch the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And we see her get the advantage, or the clue, and then she digs and she finds the Beware. And it's like, we've seen this exact scene before. There was nothing interesting about the scene. The only thing because when I rewatched it, when I found an interesting confessional was from Charlie, who said, well, obviously if you're going to find a clue or an idol, you're not going to tell anyone. If you get it in private, you're not going to tell anyone. It's like all we've seen recently is everyone can't wait to tell anyone that they got an advantage or an idol or anything. So that was funny to me, because I'm like, I don't think anyone follows that mentality anymore of not telling people. But other than that, there was just, because there was nothing interesting happening in the scene. I mean, she just got the same exact advantage or idol clue thing that the other two got.
Yeah, you actually brought something up that I didn't even consider until just now, is that because Survivor editors have the ability to kind of put things in spots that they want to, I didn't even consider that because we're on episode 3, Tiffany found the idol in episode 1, and then Randon found it in episode 2. You brought up a good point where it's like, if we're going to see two people find the same idol, twice in one episode, it kind of gets repetitive. If Sika has nothing going on and the editors already know they're not going to lose, I can now understand why they we had nothing to give them. They're not going to lose. Yeah, she found it 4 days ago, but at least now every episode you've seen someone different find an idol rather than let's just repeat the segment twice. It's actually a good point, Brett. I actually didn't think about it that way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, honestly, that has to be why they did, because I mean, I don't know when Randon found it or whether it could have been put in the first episode or what the timeline was for that, the ordering. But if you put 2 of these in the same episode, maybe. But if you had all 3 of them find it in one episode, you'd be like, all right, we get it. You probably could just do it as a montage at that point, Mm-hmm. Honestly, they probably should have done it as a montage where all of them find it at the same time and they're all reading the clue and they kind of cut back and forth or something. I mean, instead of just getting this scene that it feels inserted because we have to get a scene at that tribe, but nothing interesting is happening clearly.
The only thing that I'll say before we move on to Nami, which is actually going to be probably more interesting, is that excuse me, if Green loses, which I don't think they're going to, honestly, the only interesting thing is if they do lose, it comes down to whether Jem can find the Beware. Because if she can find it and she has now an idol and she has her vote back, and Maria has her extra votes, I feel like with the 2 women there having ammunition, I don't see how Charlie and Maria go with the guys. I feel like Charlie and Maria are not going to go with the guys while the girls have some ammunition. But if they lose and Jem for some reason can't crack the code like Tiffany did, and now she doesn't have a vote, I could see Charlie and Maria easily saying, well, Jem doesn't have her vote. We're not scared of Mariah. Now let's just go with Tim and Ben, and let's get rid of, the other 2 girls. So again, I don't think they're going to lose, but I think that maybe they're also showing us this now because it's it also kind of could sway which way Charlie and Maria go. But
yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I feel like I don't know, maybe to keep it under your 2 minutes, I would just say I agree. Yeah. Okay. I mean, the dynamics of this tribe, nothing in this episode changed. Basically, the idea that Charlie and Maria are in the middle.
Yep.
And I guess maybe if they ever go to tribal, we'll see what happens with the idol.
All right. Yep, I agree. All right, so now let's go to Nami. We already talked about Randon waking up with his pinched nerve. I will say one last thing about Randon before we move on is that I had a gut feeling, even though I didn't know for sure. I felt like when medical said we'll check back in on you and he couldn't even move his hand. I'm not saying that I predicted a medevac, but I had a gut feeling, kind of like how Matthew got pulled a few episodes later in 44. I had a feeling, I'm I don't think Randon's going to last that long in this game, whether it's tonight or whether it's a few episodes from now. If his arm can't even close, I was they're showing us this because he's just not going to make it far. But
yeah, I guess I was, I'm not even going to lie. I was hoping and praying that Yanu was losing, that Banu was going. So I think I was trying to keep up that mentality. And then, Yanu lost. But then as we saw that the episode was almost ending, obviously I knew that we were not going to have a tribal. But yeah, I mean, it seemed like a serious thing, but I wasn't sure whether there'd be, a medevac or not. But
yeah. So now, Brett, let's talk about your and mine's favorite part of the episode, with probably our favorite character of the season in Venus, because this felt very old school. I will say this really quickly before we talk about this. I will give Jeff a little bit of credit when he did say the preseason, oh, I don't want villains, and people got on his case. But then he was like, but I promise you the season's vicious. And I got to say, people 3 episodes in are being very old school catty. They're being petty. They are, just kind of not only being mean in confessionals, but they're being mean Philip and liability to people's faces. I even though I know we're upset about the backstories and we're upset about Banu being emotional, you got to admit, people are being very petty and really old school, just snippy early on, I feel like.
Yeah, and that's why I guess, I don't know. I mean, the stuff with Banu, I said it, and when we'll get to it, I guess, but when he's having his meltdowns and stuff, it does feel a little uncomfortable, honestly, as a viewer, because as I said, I think there's cultural things there. I don't know what this guy's mentality is, but I feel like I'm not saying the other people in his tribe are targeting him or anything, but I think there is a sort of cultural divide there. And, calling him a liability to his face. It was funny, but it was also like I kind of feel bad for this guy.
I do agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, there is that kind of undercurrent of bitchiness and pettiness. Maybe not in the Green Tribe, but in Orange, we've definitely seen.
Oh my god.
I mean, Soda. We've talked about that last week. Tevin has been kind of like making remarks to Venus, and she's been making remarks to him, and so yeah, no, there's definitely some things brewing still, especially in the Orange Tribe.
So, Brett, I'll give you a chance to reenact this because you and I found this to be so hysterical. But basically, Venus wants to target Hunter because Hunter's, he's making the beds.
Okay. Can I just step in for a second?
Sure,
I do got to say one thing that I found hilarious, and this for me, myself being a public school teacher, I texted you during the show. I said, I love that they're making it like this guy becoming a teacher instead of going to med school a sob story. Or whether it was a sob story or a backstory, you could call it either one. Probably a backstory, but I love how they made it like, he made the wrong decision. Well, not that he made the wrong decision, but he made the tough decision to be a teacher rather than be in med school. So I find that very funny, just for me personally as a teacher myself.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, I mean, we're at the point where sob stories are kind of blending into backstories because obviously this was just more like Hunter's just journey in terms of his career, but like you could argue it kind of gets blended in with a lot of these other sad things as well.
So Venus wants to target, and Venus really wants to target him because I mean, even in the video, he's very much portrayed as like this all-American, friendly, outgoing, personable, just what a great guy. And I love the little editing kind of trick they do there where they show the video of him being this all-American guy, and then we get the switch to her, we get a little villainous music playing, and we get her saying, I see right through this, like we got to get him out. We've seen this type of player every single season, and he's the one that's got to go.
I mean, she's right, and that's why I think we like Venus, because not only is she kind of giving us some of that old school mentality, but like she's right. We see Hunters every season. I mean, we saw literally 6 or 7 seasons ago when Tommy won. Tommy, red-haired school teacher, likable guy, just walked to the end basically. Every season there are these guys that always do well and always make it far. And she's right. And I'll let you, comment on this. But when Randon's like, what's your reasoning or what's your perspective on that? What does she say, Brett?
And she goes, my reasoning is I'm not blind.
My reasoning is I'm not blind.
That was such a great line. I was cracking up. I don't know what you think, but this was the best scene in the entire episode.
Yeah.
And as you said, like her reasoning does make sense. I mean, Tevin and Soda at the end of the day, if you think that they are targeting you, they're kind of the devil that you do know and not the devil that you don't know. I mean, Hunter is someone who, look, he might be a cutthroat player. He probably would be. And she probably knows that. Like, this is a guy who probably knows the game. He's a likable guy, and he'll cut your throat, though, still, but he'll do it with a smile. Soda and Tevin, I think, are much more obvious what they are. So she's saying, this is the type of guy who will float for a while. He's obviously good in challenges. Mm-hmm. Why would you not want to get rid of him now, especially towards, I'd say, the end of the pre-merge stage of the show? This is the time to probably get rid of those type of guys.
Yeah, and if you're Venus and you still want to weaken Tevin, but maybe you still want to keep Tevin in as like a big outwardly social threat, potentially, like if people get to the merge and say, oh, we can't let Tevin get to the end, I could see her wanting to say, Hunter's going to do well in everything. I got to cut him before he gets his roots in and he's impossible to take out because he's covered on all angles. And by taking out Hunter, yes, Tevin and Soda are close, but from what we saw with the Andy Griffin Alliance, like Tevin and Hunter are like 1 and 2, like they're a tight duo. So you not only get out a threatened Hunter, but you also severely weaken Tevin as well. So I think she has the right mentality. Just unfortunately now without Randon, she's got to hope they can make it to a swap or a merge, because I don't know at this point, unless somebody cracks, how Venus is going to get her way in now.
Yeah, I have a bad feeling. Unfortunately, I have a feeling like if they lose, and there's decent, like if they lose, I know that they were teasing it for the next episode as well, that Tevin said something about Soda going. Mm-hmm. I just have a feeling that, she's in trouble. I think that she really needed Randon to be there and the help of his advantage. But I think what we see is, I think with, not saying she's the greatest player ever, but I think we're seeing with Venus a very strategically minded player, someone who is thinking about not just how people are, but how they are perceived to others. Someone like Hunter is such a nice guy. She says he's a great guy, but that's a problem to her game. And I like that way of thinking.
Yeah, I think we both have pretty high hopes for Venus, but I have good news for you and I, Brett, because you said if they lose, I think she's in trouble. My good news is I don't think they're going to lose because I genuinely do not think Yanu, the Purple Tribe, can win a challenge. Because what we see here is they have a big lead along with Siga because for some reason, I guess Randon sitting out was the big problem for them. But basically, Orange is very far behind in the water. And then, by the way, I got to say one thing really quickly. I can also see why Venus is scared of Hunter because that move that Hunter pulled with Tevin with the momentum over the log that was incredible.
That was impressive. I did as Jeff did. I did a over the top, that Survivor kind of thing. In my apartment when he did that because that was cool to watch.
I love a good challenge hack, and I know on YouTube like Peridium and people have like videos on this, but I love anytime people can hack the challenge and seeing Hunter just be like, okay, we put Liz over first, which was a mistake. How are we going to get our two biggest guys over this log? Get me over, and I'll use my momentum to drag over Tevin. That was pretty cool.
It was cool. But so as you said, they had to come back because really without that maneuver, they were way behind. They were still behind as they got to the sandbag toss thing.
Yeah, the beanbag toss.
And then Hunter, to me, seems to be the strongest physical player of the season right now. That's another reason that Venus is right to maybe get him out.
Yeah, I mean, Hunter just beasted that. And you can argue, like, it's a carnival game. Like, anybody can win a carnival game. Like, of just tossing a bag on a pedestal. It's whatever. But, like, I mean, he really brought them all the way back. Brett, I forgot until I went back and looked at this. I thought they came back and came in second. I didn't realize they came back and came in first, which is
pretty dominantly
crazy. Also, further proving that the Green Tribe still pretty handedly still got second place. And I'm actually scared because the preview didn't tease a swap. Maybe a swap could still happen, but we didn't see it teased. I really hope we get it because if they don't swap and we have 3 more episodes of like just these tribes, I genuinely don't see how Purple's ever going to win a challenge. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, you never know, but yeah, they do seem very weak. I mean, I don't know. I guess I wouldn't say never, but they are in trouble. But at the same time, you know what, Banu is definitely strong in the challenges, and Q is an athlete, and
you would think, yeah.
I mean, they seem to collapse in the big moments, and of course, maybe we should talk about that, because obviously Green and Orange win, or maybe we'll. I don't know if you want to go to the advantage first, but we go back to eventually Purple.
Sure, yeah.
And we see that Q is blaming himself for the loss, right? And also one of my favorite parts of the episode was him blaming himself for the loss and being like, vote me out, I cost us. And then Tiffany being like, we're not voting you out. No. Are you out of your mind? And then she had a funny confessional where she's like, this guy thinks that he's like the coach or whatever, but like that's so stupid. Why is this guy going to coach me or something like that? That's why I would say I really like Tiffany as well because I feel like she's very real with her thoughts, especially in confessionals.
Yeah, I really like Tiffany. I would say other than Venus, Tiffany's probably one of my other favorites to watch this season because she's just, like you said, so authentic and real. Because like you said, she's just like, I'm not getting rid of you. Like, not only are you good in challenges other than the beanbag toss, but like you're my number one ally. I'm not going to cut you. Complete opposite side of the spectrum with Cirie, where Shane tries to quit in episode 2 of Panama, and Cirie's like, if somebody wants to quit, let them quit. So,
right, but I guess but I do find Q's mentality very interesting. I think he's a very interesting guy as well, because we see this like very sort of strong-willed like leader where he feels so comfortable even like kind of almost insulting Banu to his face, and yet he's also a guy who takes such kind of personal responsibility in the game and in losses for the tribe that I don't know how serious he was about it, but that he's saying to them, vote me out. I mean, I think he's a pretty interesting character.
I think Q is a great character. I think I'm liking Q more than I thought I would. Maybe I just thought like from his bio, maybe with his football background, I kind of maybe saw him as kind of like an old school person wanting to come in and be the leader and kind of just, being a little too bossy at camp, but he clearly has a pretty good game sense. And I think I do like Q a lot. But you're right. I don't think he was ever going to follow through with this. I think he had kind of said it in a moment of upsetness and weakness. But I think he would have eventually, even with Tiffany saying no, I think he would have come around and been like, yeah, no, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. I think especially when Banu comes back from that journey, tells the whole group, oh, I didn't get to play, and then goes to Q and says, actually, I lost my vote. And Q's like, you're a liability. I think in that moment, Q's got to be like, okay, I can't go before this guy goes. Like, this
Right.
just can't happen.
Just a certain amount of pride, exactly. But so I guess maybe let's talk about the journey,
Sure.
right? So we have well, I forget who Orange picked it, right? They picked the three that went, including that it was Liz and then Ben and Banu for purple. And of course, as I was watching, I'm like, it's gonna be Banu. Just you know it's gonna be Banu. And so they go on the journey. And well, firstly, what do you think of this journey? The kind of two of them playing, one of them not, and then them having to do another puzzle. What do you think of that?
I don't like it. I don't like it. It's gimmicky. My biggest problem of this new era, honestly, I'm going to be completely honest with you. It's not the casting. It's not the sob stories. I mean, they're not great, but that's not my biggest problem. My biggest problem is Jeff and production's obsession with making people lose their votes. Because in my mind, if more people have votes, you have more possible outcomes for a vote. You have more permutations of people that can vote together. And I don't see the fascination not only with people losing their votes, but forcing people to risk it. Because it's one thing, Brett, to your point, if they say, okay, two of you are going to play, or two of you are going to have a chance to play, and one of you won't. If you let Ben and Banu walk to the puzzle, they see it first and they can choose to play or not. Fine, you at least give them a choice to want to hold their vote, have agency in the game. I do not like at all when in these last 6 seasons of the new era, production says, we're going to force you to risk your vote against your will, and now you may not have a vote. I don't like that.
And we talked about, I think last week, or maybe it was week one, about the kind of like we would probably never offer to go on these journeys, right? Where like they just say, but now it's like, as you said, you're at a point where another tribe is picking you to go on the journey. Then you have to go and you have to play this game. And you are very, if you're not good at puzzles, you're going to lose your vote. How is that in the spirit of the game? Right?
I agree.
How is that in the spirit of Survivor? And of course, so basically, I guess it's some of what happens, right? Ben and Banu, we'll talk about Banu's meltdown before, but Banu and Ben play the game and they lose it. They can't get the puzzle. And so Banu actually, again, felt bad for him, despite not liking him as a character, felt bad for him because here's a guy who thinks he has no chance, nothing. And now you take away maybe his only chance because he's losing his vote at Tribal. He has nothing now. As he said, he doesn't even have shot in the dark.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue like if they went to Tribal and he went home. I'm not saying I never would have said like Banu got screwed because obviously he put himself in the spot, but like you could make the argument like you just said, he doesn't have he is forced to go on the journey, forced to do the game, loses the game and his vote and the shot in the dark, and now has nothing to do to save himself other than campaign at camp. One can make the argument that is like handcuffing a player almost to like the nth degree almost.
Exactly. So yeah, it was tough. I mean, I guess for me I them doing a puzzle, to me it's not exciting television. Like they go on this journey and like they're doing this puzzle. It's not really even like a physical challenge of any sort. So it just feels like, and like all they end up doing is just losing their vote. And to me, the ramifications of that back at back at camp is not that interesting. So I feel like it is a big waste of time. However, if we want to talk about it, maybe what was not a waste of time and what the editors certainly loved seeing as it was happening in front of them was Banu having this meltdown in front of Liz and Ben and just revealing everything, and that he needs a miracle and he starts crying, and it's just again, for me, it was a little uncomfortable to watch, honestly.
I mean, I'm sure obviously, I'm sure they found out eventually, but if I was Tiffany, Q, and Kenzie, and I was watching this on TV for the first time, and I saw my entire game just got spilled out to the other tribes, to the other 12 people in this game, and that maybe cost me my game, I would be besides myself. Like, again, I don't know what's going to happen with Kenzie. I don't want to say Kenzie's basically dead on arrival at Merge because now everyone sees her as the biggest threat in the game, but her odds are not looking great. and I'm sure she's going to find out about this either at Ponderosa or somewhere else. But like, if I was them and I watched back my tribe mate just like sink my game and tell people I'm a mastermind, they're working together, they're a tight duo, you can't trust them. Like Banu, I hope Tiffany, Q, and Kenzie can still make it far, but Banu really did a number on them to the other tribes.
But I think honestly, I think it was mostly Kenzie because you know what you say people are a duo. Of course, like that's giving away information. It's bad, but like I guess it's not saying like you have to worry about them as a game player, right? Like
Yeah.
you're saying like they're tight. I mean, there's only 4 people in the tribe. Some people are going to be tight, but
Yeah.
to be like, oh, this one, she's a mastermind. Like that, as you said, like that is the only impression then that the other tribes have of that person is the information they're getting from this, encounter. So that was really damaging to Kenzie's game. It's probably, I mean, we'll see if it ever comes back up in the edit, later on, if she ever like gets voted out, like that could be a big reason why she goes is that the perception of her is going to have come from Banu at this journey visit.
Yeah, and like we see when Ben and Liz get back to their respective camps, they're like, yeah, well, Liz was like, I didn't get to play, and Ben said I lost my vote, or no, actually, I wanted to talk to you about that because you just rewatched it. So Liz, this was very interesting. They all handled it differently, by the way. So Liz went back and said truthfully, I didn't get to play, which is fair.
Yeah.
You didn't get to play, you didn't lose your vote, you don't have an advantage. Banu lies and says like, oh, I didn't get to play like Liz didn't get to play, but then tells Q actually I lost my votes, which was not great. Ben, I mean, Brett, you just watched this. Can you remind me what Ben did? Because Ben had a very interesting lie.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually probably the thing I forgot most about this episode as I was rewatching, I actually completely forgot about this scene or that Ben went back and lied in the way he did. But yeah, he lied and said that there was some challenge, I guess, where they had to like count the number of circles or whatever, like one of those type of things, and that he did participate in it, but that he didn't find out whether he got it right or not, and that at the next, I think he said at the next tribal, he would be told, and either he would get an advantage or lose his vote at that point.
Yeah.
And so he didn't say that he lost his vote yet. He wanted to hide from the fact that he knows that he has his vote lost to the next tribal.
So let me ask you, because I feel like I go back and forth on this. Do you feel like that's a good lie, or do you think it's a bad lie?
I don't think it was necessary for him. Maybe. I mean, I'm not sure what you're benefiting from not just telling because I don't know how much that would have changed. I mean, I guess if he sees it as a very much like a 3-3 split in boys and girls, giving up that information that you don't have a vote could be crucial. So I could see that in their particular case at their camp with him thinking maybe it's a 3-3 gender divide that he can't let them know that he lost his vote. So I could see it that way.
Yeah, well, again, and maybe he's not aware Charlie and Maria are as in the swing position as they are. But like again, if Ben lost his vote, that could push Charlie and Maria to vote out Ben or Tim potentially without that missing vote. I see it as good because I feel like he's not giving people a chance to kind of game around him because they can't now like play knowing whether he has a vote or not and whether he has an advantage or not. So I guess in their minds, it's like, well, we can't actively put votes on Ben now. Like we can't say if we lose the next challenge, Ben's going to go because what if he has an idol because he won that challenge or he won that advantage? That could maybe save Ben and maybe they'll vote out Tim instead. My only downside to Ben's lie is like, well, now people might say, let's not even risk it because he could have something. Let's put all the votes on him just in case he has something. So I could see it going both ways where people could just out of a abundance of caution vote for him. But I could also see it working out well where it's like, we can't plan around this until we know for sure. So let's not put Ben's name out there right now. So.
Yeah, I could see both scenarios. I think it's a tough position, as you said as well, and this goes back to the fact that he's being forced to go on this journey. So he's forced to navigate this situation that he wouldn't have had to otherwise, right? So it is unfortunate for him in that way that he has to navigate and that he did lose his vote. I mean, for Banu, as you said, I mean, Banu probably was going to go regardless. I think if they went to tribal, it didn't really matter whether he had his vote or not, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if it was 2-2, maybe, but for Ben, it's a bigger issue that he's losing his vote. I think at this next tribal, so that was a tough one for him to to lose his vote.
Yeah, well, like we said earlier, if the Green never loses, it may not even matter for him. So,
Right. So then I guess I don't know if we want to wrap up talking about the sort of what's going on at Yanu,
sure.
leading up to the tribal that didn't happen. That Q is trying to, and we kind of talked about it already, but talk to Tiffany to maybe get out Kenzie. He says this is when he says the liability comment to Banu, and he says, I'm gonna save you. Like we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna flip it and get Kenzie out.
Mhm.
What did you think of this whole kind of build up before we get Jeff walking onto the beach?
So, I mean, Banu losing his vote, and this is again why I hate people losing votes. It could have been a very fun episode if Banu had his vote and Q decides to lie to Tiffany and makes it a 2-2 split. That could have been a very fun tribal council, but of course we can't have nice things. So, Banu loses his vote, and Q's like, no, I want Kenzie gone. She's a big threat, and I can pull Banu in as a number, but I need to flip Tiffany. I thought this was interesting from Q. I mean, if you have Banu on your side, like I still think personally, if I'm Q, I think it's a little too soon to be making this move. Maybe you're super afraid of Kenzie at a swap, but like I just think you've seen how much of a loose cannon Banu is, and Q doesn't even know how much he spilled on the journey too. I just don't think if you're a rational player, if I'm a rational player, I want to play with rational people. I don't want to play with somebody where I can't like out predict their moves. Like obviously, Brett, if I'm playing against you, and I would hope we would play together, but if I'm playing against you, I can maybe think, okay, I know what Brett maybe wants to do because I know what's optimally good for Brett's game. If I'm playing with somebody like a Banu who I don't know what he's going to do, I don't want that piece on the game board. So I feel like if I'm Q, I want him off. Clearly, Q, like the Rob Cesternino strategy, Q wants to pull in the people on the bottom and really make something out of that, which I can appreciate. So if you're asking me what did I think about it, I thought that, it's interesting to see Q make this attempt against Kenzie. I would have loved to have seen if it would have worked or not, if not for the medevac. But I thought it was interesting from Q's side, at least.
Yeah, it does give us an interesting insight into Q. And I mean, this has been building, I think, for the first couple episodes. I mean, it was the first episode, I think, right? Where Q were already saying about how Kenzie was a threat and all this. And Kenzie was kind of saying, I think, the same thing about Q. So I feel like they've been kind of tentative partners. And I feel like that's why that trio, to me, it's never been that stable, especially Kenzie being in it. It's just the fact that, like, look at who the other three people in their tribe were, right? Like, total disasters. Especially Jess and Banu. So I think they've been kind of forced to work together. But I think that in some ways Q was very genuine about wanting to get rid of Kenzie. But I'll say again what I said earlier on in the episode, that I don't think that Tiffany would have turned on Kenzie at this point. And I think she would have convinced Q, be like, all right, let's wait, let's just get Banu out. And I think it would have been a 3-0. But I guess we'll never know.
Yeah, no, I mean, well,
and then we get Jeff walking up the beach, and we get that was a funny shot of Tiffany kind of reacting to it. Exactly. And then what I did appreciate the most from Banu this episode was just his glee to hear that Randon has a medical issue, right? Like, we think about it and we feel so bad for Randon, and we have this emotional scene, and then Banu is over the moon. He's so happy that he finds out that he has a pinched nerve.
I mean, it was very like, sad and ironic, but like the whole episode, he's like, I'm asking God for a sign. I'm asking for help. And I did not think that Randon getting medevac was the sign that he needed. But Banu was grateful he got to live another day.
Yes. And then I guess at, why am I forgetting the Orange Tribe's name? At Nami, we see that scene, and I guess, as I said, Randon, I think, took it well, and he understood that he probably had to go. But I think the thing that I will remember from this is the fact that Venus was like, oh, he's such a nice guy, but also this is screwing me in my game and screwing me over because I lose my only ally on the tribe.
I mean, I'll say this: what an arc for Randon and Venus. From Randon basically, seemingly against her in the first episode, calling her the Parvati, to then telling her about his advantage, to her now being sad he's getting medevac because they were number one allies. It's quite a 3-episode, full circle arc for the two of them.
Right. It was almost like a season-long arc in 3 episodes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Literally, we went from them being enemies to them working together to the emotions pouring out as one of them leaves.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I don't know. I guess we spoke about pretty much everything. I mean, what were your overall thoughts about? Because you sort of mentioned that it's been a slow start.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about the episode as a whole? But just like I guess where the direction of the season's going right now.
So again, I guess to wrap it up, I agree. Like I said at the start of this podcast, if people join Lakes, we actually have about 27, we had almost 30 people watching at one point. So thank you everybody for watching. It's a slow start just because the Purple Tribe Yanu just keeps losing, and we don't get to see enough of Nami and Siga. And I think that just makes for a slow start when the same tribe keeps losing. I mean, look, that's not obviously the only like barometer, because obviously Heroes versus Villains is an all-time season and the heroes kept losing, so it's not like a one-for-one comparison. But like when you have the same tribe keep losing and you have Banu, who is hit or miss for you, whether you love him or hate him, is taking up a lot of the episode and you're not seeing other people, it can be a bit of a slog. Why I have still, Brett, some hope is that, like I said, there are some great characters like Venus and Tiffany and Q and Kenzie, and there's some really great, potential in these players, hopefully. And like I said earlier, these people are getting petty and they're being, they're making fake idols, they're calling people liabilities to their faces. They're not like hunky dory. The Green Tribe is like very happy go lucky, but Orange and Purple are complete, just shit shows at this point. So I have some hope that this could get better, but I'm slow start, but I'm hopeful. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with slow start. I think for me, this the big thing is, and I said it. This is the episode where Banu, the entertainment for me was lost, and it was getting uncomfortable to watch and a drag on the episode. So I think whether it's a tribe swap or a merge or whatever, where we can see more characters, I think we have to kind of get Banu off the edit a little bit. And part of that is, it's just been the fact that that tribe has kept losing. So it is tough, especially I think as we mentioned in a 3-tribe season when there's one disaster tribe, it makes it worse than maybe if there's a 2-tribe season that one is a disaster tribe. That might be a little bit better. This, I think, there's always going to be one tribe that's so under-edited, and this season it is the Green Tribe. I think there's still some potential for the season, but that's why I was really hoping that Banu would go this episode, because the edit would kind of open up a little bit. But we'll see, what happens. I think that we've had some tough episodes because, episode 1, okay, 2-hour premiere, we said that's fine with me. But then a 2-hour second episode where we only have one tribal and it dragged. We spoke last week about how it dragged. And then to have an hour and a half episode, most of they're all hour and a half now, but an hour and a half episode where we don't even get a tribal, it's not the best start to a season ever.
Yeah, well, look, we'll see if we get a swap next week. I'm not hopeful because it wasn't in the preview, but you never know. But we'll see what happens.
We'll see. But yeah, thanks for having me once again, Ryan. It's been a great 3-week stretch. But we'll see. Maybe we'll be back to regularly scheduled programming next week.
Yeah, again, like I said, we're gonna play it by ear with some trips coming up and with Dylan's work. It's gonna be very touch or go, but I've been very happy to talk with Brett these last 3 weeks about Survivor. We'll see if we are back again later in the season. But for now, that was it for episode 3, and we'll see you hopefully in a few days for episode 4. So grab your torches and head back to camp. Good night.